Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Two Chiefs, One Mike podcast. I'm Scott Hughes.
And I'm Mike Hawkins.
And here we are, episode number 8. Mike, can you believe it?
I can't believe it lasted this long, right? And it's gaining traction. We look at our last video. Lisa was a great guest last time, and that one, especially on YouTube, is really taken off. So we're gaining more footing every week.
What an incredible story that Lisa shared. If you haven't listened to Lisa's story, tragedy with her husband who committed suicide 3 years to the day that he retired from the Cleveland Police Department, and Lisa shares some really interesting takeaways that all of our listeners need to check out. So Mike, where you been? What you been up to?
Well, I just got off the plane just a little bit ago. I got a little bit of a tan. Weather wasn't the greatest, but down in Orlando at the National Partner Conference put on by the FBI Office of Partner Engagement. I was there this week, Monday through just a couple hours ago, actually, Monday through Thursday. It was a great event. They asked us to go and put us up at the Ritz, right? Federal money, not local money. And it was chiefs and department heads from across the country. There's 120, 150, about that range. And they brought in what the feds can do for us and gave us a little bit of training. It was a couple days crash course at Orlando PD. What a place. Orlando did a great job putting this on for the FBI, but it met a lot of people from all over the country, shared some of the same problems we have, but it was a lot of the lessons that you took away from these instructors, these speakers, on how they can partner with you and your agency and get the help that communities need.
So this was how the FBI can help you, or how all federal partners can help you?
it was geared more towards the FBI, but there were talks from other federal partners. So it was, I would say, all federal partners. We did some case studies. We did the Club Q shooting down there in Orlando, did a case study with people that were there, actually were responsible for the actual response there. Another class was on leading through crisis, talking to all the chiefs about necessary steps you need to take during the event, after the event, and just some tips on what they can offer too. And a lot of it, I think of last episode with Lisa, but the resources for even officers that you can have, and not only in the community but through the federal government. But there were some important things, regional breakouts. So we had a Midwest, Northern regional breakout, and there were questions and concerns that we gave to them that we see in our area, and they're going to bring that back to the director and see how they can better help agencies. And these weren't large agencies; you had to be under 500 sworn. So the big ones weren't there, and for us 500 is big, right? But right. I think average size agencies were there, so it really was how they can help us, because those large agencies, they have a lot of those resources in house. One of the topics was IgG, investigative genetic genealogy, and fortunately I had used the FBI for a case and still am. So it was interesting to hear them talk. I think people were blown away by what they can do. Even going to the Nolberg case that's going on, how they did that. But those are resources that they can provide to identify identified remains or gather suspects based on DNA. But a lot of violent crime things, but technology. They had a professor from Harvard came in and gave a great speech on AI and how it's going to affect law enforcement, and had us play around a little bit with things and just the things it's going to do. And it was really a good time in good contacts.
How did you find out about it? Like, if you want to go again next year, was it invite only, or?
It was invite. Our regional director reached out and he asked me if I'd be interested in going. And I thought, well, what is it? Right. So luckily there was somebody who had gone before, and I called and asked. He said it was a great time, well worth it, and the connections. So hopefully they continue this. They said they've only done it. Last year was East Coast and then West Coast. So this was the national one, but I hope it continues. Hope the funding is there for it, because it really was worthwhile, I think, for our agency. And I've already got tips and things I've been writing down that I wanted to bring back.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know about how it is up there, but we're seeing a noticeable difference in the last 5 or 6 months with the communication from our federal partners down to the local level. So I suspect it has to do with the changing at the top of all the different agencies, but we're really seeing the cooperation of things.
And I think that was the goal of this. Like, we're here for you. We're here to cooperate with you. And locally, we've seen it, right? So, when I say FBI, the HSI was there. There's some other partners, but they had some presentations, and it's not just immigration, right? That's the hot button topic. Do you want to sign that agreement? You're going to have a task force officer. You're going to do this. That's not what it was about. See, HSI has assisted us in our town in the last couple of weeks with things that have nothing to do with immigration. So, they're great partners, and I think that relationship, they're out there now working hard, and we see it. So it's great to have other resources that have bigger webs than we have.
That's awesome. Well, good. I'm glad you get to spend a week in Orlando, Florida at the Ritz on our dime.
Well, I would tell you this. It was sunny when I got there, right? Rained all day Tuesday, all day Wednesday, a little cloudy today. Now, I was inside, right, learning, but I come back here and it's raining and cloudy. The cloud is following, yeah. So what about you? What have you been up to? I've seen you on some podcasts, seen you out teaching. What's going on?
Well, I'll tell you, it's been kind of a somber environment here in Ohio the last,
you guys have been hit hard there.
So today we're recording this podcast. It's June 5th. It probably won't be released for a few more days. But yes, in the last month, Ohio has really been hit hard. We had the tragic murder of Deputy Larry Henderson down in Cincinnati, who was targeted for simply wearing his uniform. And then last week we had a horrific murder of Deputy Daniel Schur of Morrow County, Ohio, which is between Cincinnati and Columbus. Very rural county. First deputy ever murdered in that county's history who was going to a domestic violence call.
Ohio mourns the loss of a Morrow County deputy. This is a picture of 31-year-old Daniel Scheer. He was shot and killed while responding to a domestic violence call. Deputy Scheer was a 4-year veteran of the Morrow County Sheriff's Office, and this was his first job in law enforcement. Good evening. I'm Mike McCarthy.
And I'm Jessica Ralston. We have live team coverage tonight. Tom Bosco is taking a closer look at how Deputy Scherer is being remembered. Kirsten Lindquist shows us what neighbors say they saw and why they are in disbelief. But first, court records revealing in vivid detail the violent, volatile situation that Deputy Scherer found himself in. Shots had already been fired before he arrived on the scene.
Today, we learned bullets struck a neighboring home and a nearby truck as well. Investigators say Deputy Scherer then encountered armed suspect Brian Wilson. Tonight, he is charged with aggravated murder, and we are learning what led to a shootout. The deadly confrontation happened at the porch of a Marengo home. It's where court records reveal Morrow County Deputy Daniel Scheer's body camera recorded him first interacting with armed suspect Brian Wilson after 7:30 last night. This is Wilson's picture from a 2009 arrest. Records show a neighbor warned the deputy Wilson had already fired shots Monday night and said, quote, "If I was going to die tonight, I'd be okay with it." Records also reveal details of a conversation between Wilson and the deputy, with Wilson saying, quote, "Don't come up here," and, quote, "I'm not in the expletive mood." When the deputy tried to de-escalate the situation by talking with Wilson, Wilson said, quote, "I will expletive kill you."
What if you can create your own website by saying, "This is what I want"? With Wix, you can.
Then going on to say, quote, "I'm not expletive playing. You better just expletive go if you want your family to see you tomorrow," and continuing to tell the deputy to leave. Then court records show Wilson approached the steps near the deputy's location and a shootout occurred. Overnight, investigators searched the yard with a metal detector and cut into a wall, tracking down shell casings and more. The court records now detail at least 2 bursts of gunfire happened, with a definitive pause between them, and the deputy's body camera recorded the sounds of multiple clicks, consistent with a trigger being pulled, but a gun striking a fired cartridge or an empty chamber. Investigators found 2 guns believed to be fired by Wilson, a semi-automatic pistol and a revolver.
former Marine. They just had his funeral yesterday. In fact, one of the photographs at the funeral was a handwritten note that he had wrote as a kid that essentially said that, when he grows up, all he wants to do is be a police officer. So, and then we had that, and then we had 2 police officers in Mifflin Township, Ohio, just outside of Columbus, who were shot chasing a suspect armed with a gun. They finally captured him after several days of a manhunt. And yeah, it's just been, and then we had other incidents around the country. We had a shooting in Nashville where an officer went out with a guy who had a warrant for attempted murder, and the guy fled, turned around, fired a gun at the cop, shot him in the leg. Fortunately, the officer survived.
Hey, buddy, come here. Come here. Hey, let me see your hands.
Reese, I'm coming across the bridge on Division now. Where you need me? Stop! You better stop! 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 Shots fired! Shots fired!
Are you hit?
Yeah.
Are you hit?
I think I got hit in the leg. Something hit me in the leg.
But, it's tragic in that we're seeing an uptick in individuals just targeting police officers for simply, wearing the uniform and doing their job. And, some of these cases, the incident in Mifflin Township, the incident in Nashville in particular, have some commonalities. And that is, they were both traffic stop initiated, subject fled, and individuals had a gun, pointed the gun at the officers and shot the officers. And then we had the case in Cincinnati, let's not forget, that started the Larry Henderson murder, where the kid fled from the vehicle. I say kid, young adult, fled from the vehicle armed with a gun. And in that case, the officer shot him before he could shoot the cops.
Police are sharing body camera video of the moments that led to an officer-involved shooting and killing of a suspect in East Price Hill.
And WLWT News 5's Danielle Dindak has been leading the way on this investigation for us. She's live right now, walking us through the video. Hi, Danielle.
Hi there, Mike. This video is very fast. We're talking about 6 seconds. 6 seconds from the time that officer got out of his vehicle and fired those shots. I do want to warn you, what you're about to watch could be hard to see.
He's got a gun. He's got a gun on your right. On your right.
In a matter of seconds. It all began with a stolen vehicle, a Kia from Edgewood, Kentucky. GPS tracking led the investigation here, a condo complex in East Price Hill. Officers arrived, and Chief Terry Thiegy explains what happened next.
All 4 individuals get out and start running.
On your right. On your right.
Some in different directions. So officers decide which individual they're going to pursue. One officer decides to pursue the individual who we now know had a firearm in his hand.
At some point, the person with the gun slips.
They heard the metal from the firearm hit the concrete. This individual gets up, still has the firearm in his hand, and continues to run through the dumpster.
The officer who fired the shots was chasing another suspect before he made contact with the armed suspect.
The officer who did discharge his firearm said that when the individual came out between the dumpsters, he had the firearm in front of him. It was in like a bladed position, and it was pointed at the officer. And he felt threatened for his life, and that's why he discharged his firearm.
4 to 5 rounds were fired. The suspect was hit twice, given medical care right away, and died. The AG says this is the gun the suspect had. A semi-automatic with an extended magazine, with another magazine in his pocket.
Let me be very direct. We cannot allow individuals to flee from officers with a loaded firearm aimed at them. When this happens, the outcome is almost always tragic.
Police also told us that a stolen gun was found inside that stolen Kia. At this time, we still do not have the identity of the person who was shot and killed. All police could tell us is that he was approximately 18 years old. Reporting live in East Price Hill tonight, Danielle Dindak, WLWT News 5.
We have 3 cases. We have Cincinnati, we have Mifflin Township, and we have Nashville, where all 3 have similar fact patterns: bailing out of a vehicle or running from police, armed with a gun, turn around and shoot. And in 2 of the 3, officers were shot.
So let me ask you this. So there's nothing worse than the Monday morning quarterback, right? That the public and people do, saying, oh, they shouldn't have done this. They should have done this. And, you know, as the chief, I hate to ever do that, because you're not there. You're not in that situation. You are a use of force expert, a recognized expert, correct?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
I know you wrote some articles on this. So what is your take on what you saw, some of the videos, or because you've been getting some traction on at least one of the articles that you wrote about? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the one article I wrote had 1.3 million hits on X or Twitter.
That's almost as much as we have subscribers, right? Is that?
It's not quite that high.
Okay,
Mike.
so we should post that. All right. Yeah.
It's not quite that high.
Take out the dead. Maybe it's 13. Yeah, I added wrong. So, but anyway, yeah. So you wrote.
Yeah, I wrote an article about the Ryan Hinton case. Ryan Hinton is the case in Cincinnati where a young man bailed out of a stolen vehicle with a handgun with an extended magazine, and when he fled, he dropped the gun, picked the gun back up, and officer had to use deadly force to prevent him from becoming a victim. And as a result of that case, that's when the young man's father murdered Larry Henderson the next day, just for the uniform. And then the Nashville incident happened about 11 days later. And then probably within 14 days, we had these 2 Mifflin Township officers who were shot, guy bailed out of a vehicle armed with a gun. So to your point, one of the things that I've preached for now 13 years traveling the country teaching is anytime these incidents occur and they're captured on video, we owe it to our staff to use these videos and figure out what are the lessons learned. Not the Monday morning quarterback, not to critique or criticize or blame or indict the officers involved, but take them and how can we use them to make the profession better.
Scott, what have you noticed in these videos that maybe are similar or different? Like, what have you seen as a use of force guy that you can talk about in these videos? And I know some of these cases may be ongoing, so we don't want to get too far into the weeds, but just initially, what do you see?
As I've been traveling around the country for the last 12 or 13 years, speaking to cops, teaching everything from safety and tactics to leadership to survival, like all those topics, we always talk about the fundamentals. And I don't know enough about a lot of these cases to give you like in depth, like a tactical analysis. What I want to suggest is, as law enforcement leaders, we have to ensure that we get back to giving our cops fundamental training in street survival type topics, right? Behind me, I don't know if you can see it, but right here is the original street survival book from 1980. And then right over here is the rewrite that was done, I believe, in 2016 or 2017.
That's when you started, right? 1980?
Yeah. But my point is we need to get back in law enforcement to giving our officers training that's actually going to benefit them on the street. We've talked about this in little
Yeah, you touched base about even the shooting through the window and stuff like that.
Yeah, we have to train for these fast, unpredictable situations that are impacting our officers, getting our officers hurt or killed. Listen, there's a time and a place for sexual harassment training and workplace violence and in those PC trainings that we're forced to go to. Outside of that, we have to get our officers in scenario-based training that's fast-paced. They're getting their heart rate going. They're getting their blood pressure up. Their breathing's changing. They're experiencing auditory exclusion and perceptual narrowing. Like we have to change the way we view law enforcement training in this country. Sitting in front of a computer, and we've said this how many times, 8 podcasts, how many times we said this, sitting in front of a computer, taking some online class, in my opinion, is not preparing the officers for the realities that they're going to face on the streets. And leaders have to figure out, what can I do in my agency to prepare my people? I don't have a budget for scenario-based training. I don't have money for simunitions. I don't have money. I don't have an outdoor range. I can't afford to bring in cars and shoot out of the windows and inside, from inside the car. Like I'm fortunate that we can do. That's okay. If you're going to, if nothing else, at a bare minimum, when these videos come out on the internet, do your research, get the facts of the case, play the video, and then do the what if game. Or the when then game. When this happens here, then what are we going to do? What are the lessons learned? What are the takeaways? That mental rehearsal, if you will, that will better prepare your folks. Talk about it at roll call. Again, I feel like Groundhog's Day sometimes on some of these episodes, but after the first 5 or 6 minutes of roll call, it becomes a gigantic BS session where we just talk about things that have nothing to do with law enforcement, complain about things we can't fix. What better time to spend getting your people prepared for the realities of their street?
So saying that, when you're talking about training, and you've talked about the cars before, where are you at on stops training or simunition, as opposed to maybe now the thing, virtual reality training? What do you think of that? Because I remember the old FATS machine, and I was not a fan, right? I never liked that. You'd yell at the screen so far away. But have you or your officers been involved in any of the virtual reality training?
We have, and I think they both have pros or cons. I think the virtual reality has its place. I think it's convenient because, you put these goggles on, you can go anywhere and do it. So I think you do a roll call. You can do it in the parking lot, and you can apply it a lot easier, I think. Mm-hmm. I think one of the downsides there is it's animated. It's a video. So I think there's a little bit of, you lose some of the realism.
Yeah.
As opposed to simunitions training, you've got the mask on, you've got the gun, you've got the rounds, you're taking rounds, you're firing rounds, you're feeling the pull of that gun. I think that is, this is my opinion, I think that is a notch above. But again, it comes down to an affordability, right? Which I respect that. Agencies are like, hey, we can't afford simunitions, but we can afford a pair of VR goggles. Well, hey, you know what? Kudos to you. No arguments from me. You're doing a lot more than a lot of agencies are doing. You've made this a priority, and I think that's the takeaway, right? Is chiefs and commanders making training a priority. I just posted today a blog on here in Ohio. We set aside, I believe it was $80 million for continued professional training, and every officer in Ohio has to take 24 hours or 32 hours, whatever it is, of mandatory topics, right? In next year's budget, in 2026 budget, they're wanting to cut that number by 15 million, number one. Wow. Number two, they're wanting to get rid of all funding for universities and college police departments in Ohio. And I'm like, what are we doing? The whole university and college taking the money away from them completely is its own argument. Removing $15 million from the budget, $15 million from the CPT fund, we're going the wrong way. We preach about wanting to make the job better and more professional and better trained, but then you want to take $15 million away and then not even give money to colleges and universities. But then you're going to hold officers to this standard that's way up here, but we're only going to give them the funding to train down here.
So how long has that CPT program been? Because Michigan, so MCOLS just started the CPE program last year, went from 8 hours to 24 and then to 32, but it tells you what your required 8 hours are going to be, and then you can have 8 additional, or next year it goes up on things that are relative to the agency. So it is very new to us, and the funds are just coming out. What about Ohio? How long have you guys had that?
It's funny because it's not funny. It's kind of sad. The CPT, I believe, came out in 2021 or 2022. This was post George Floyd, right? Everybody, we need give them money, give them money.
But they're not the topics that you're talking about today. And it's the online virtual academies and Lexipolls and whatever. Police wants great products. I'm not saying anything good or bad about either of them, but it's, to your point, it's not the reality-based training that gets that blood pumping and the heart racing a little bit to simulate what's really happening on the street.
Right. So it's interesting. Several years ago, I don't know, a decade ago, maybe longer.
1980, like that book behind you.
Yeah. Ohio decided that they were going to allow casinos. And one of the big, talking points for bringing casino betting into Ohio was, we're going to fund law enforcement training. I don't know where that money went. It's somewhere. And we joke now, like, what happened to all that casino money? Because
somebody probably bet it on Ohio State, like that shirt you had on against Michigan, and they lost it all.
It's a great shirt right here. It's a great shirt. But yeah, so the joke is like, where'd all that money go? And I don't know where it went. But anyhow, so now they got the CPT. So post George Floyd, everybody freaks out. We need funding. So they fund it. And here we are, 3 years later. Well, we don't need it that bad. Well, what do you mean you don't need it that bad? The job is getting harder. Recruiting and retention is still a problem. Mm-hmm. Departments don't have deep pockets. You've already made all these slashes. Now you want to take $15 million, but we're going to raise the bar and we're going to expect you to still perform at this level, but we're not going to give you the funding to help you get it.
Then the good class that you want doesn't qualify for what we call CPE. So it's like, well, I'd love to send you to that, but I have to send you to these 32 hours of this. So I'm going to look for something else. My deputy chief is going crazy trying to find those good classes that qualify CPE. There's a point where I'm going to send them to the class and we'll figure it out later, right?
Well, here's the thing in Ohio, you don't even have to go to a class. You can get all of your CPT training through online webinars.
And we can too, if you
want to.
But
it's a joke. They're not learning anything. What are you learning watching a webinar? Nothing. Nothing. You're on your phone. You're screwing around.
It's a checkbox, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And it doesn't train our cops, which goes back to what I said in the beginning. We have to get out of that mindset. And if your state doesn't have the funding, then you've got to advocate as a chief. That's why I made that post today. Find one of my social media platforms. You can read the post. We have to be advocating for our people. And, I'll keep doing it. I know you're going to keep doing it up in your state. We need other people to jump on board and speak up. And there are some people out there in the country doing a lot of good things at the chief level, but there's a lot more that are staying silent, aren't saying a peep.
So let me ask you this. Talk about not saying people. When you post, most of your people are law enforcement friendly. They're following you because they want to hear what you have to say. When you do your use of force posts, when you do these posts, do you get any naysayers? Do you get any negative comments or any pushback from anyone?
Yeah, purposefully, I've made my last several posts public, so they weren't locked down to my friend. My LinkedIn page is wide open. My Facebook page, I tend to keep more secure because I put personal stuff on there. But my LinkedIn page, I'm at almost 12,000 followers right now on LinkedIn. And there's some non-pro police folks on there. And yes, there has been a little bit, but surprisingly, Mike, not near as much. I'll tell you, my Twitter page, my X page, that's public too. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of bots on there, and I do get some pushback on there. I haven't checked it tonight, but I'm sure I'll get some pushback on this thing I just posted about these CPT hours. But no, surprisingly, most people are like they're supportive and they get it, which is reassuring.
All right, one more question, because I know we were talking about some of the use of force.
Yep.
In your opinion, why the increase in Ohio? What is going on? I mean, obviously it's across the country, but what is it? That seems like a lot in that area in that short amount of time. What do you see as the problem?
I think it's a couple different things. I think one, people are, I think mental health is a real problem. And I am not sitting here trying to say I'm some kind of a mental health expert, because I'm not. In fact, I know nothing about it, but I know that I feel like we spend a lot of time on calls for service dealing with folks with mental health, and I don't know if it's the coping mechanisms, pressure, stress, social media, all kind of ties into that. But I think that's a big component. I think drug and alcohol abuse continues to be an issue in our country with individuals. And I think third, probably maybe there's four things. Third, I think people are just more apt to take a shot, because I think it ties into number four, which is the lack of consequences. In some jurisdictions around this country, we have individuals, and I think this was the case in the Mifflin Township, Ohio, that I spoke of earlier. It's my understanding that guy who shot those two police officers, nearly killing one, by the way, was on what we call a version of community release or post-release control, or, probation.
Because there's no room to house him anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Or we have individuals, judges and prosecutors who are not pursuing what maybe they could pursue. And it's my understanding that's what happened in the Mifflin Township case. Is this guy should have probably been locked up by most accounts, and he wasn't. And now we have two officers, one who probably should have been murdered, should have been killed in that incident, but he survived. So yeah,
crazy. What about, okay, so in the last 13 years? Same amount? Do you see a huge uptick? Because, the anti-police sentiment, we thought maybe it was against the police, but I think that pendulum's swinging back in police favor. But do you think it's been consistent over the last 10 years or so with everything that we've seen throughout the country?
I think the top three killers of law enforcement historically are gunfire, heart attacks, and traffic crashes. I think if you look back at the data, if you go to Officer Down Memorial page or the National Law Enforcement Officer Memorial, I think you'll see heart attacks, crashes, and gunfire always kind of the top three. Now, they may move 1 to 3, 2 to 1, whatever, but I think those are typically the top three. I think because of social media and how fast news travels, I think we just hear about it more. But certainly when people say there's a war on cops, I would agree with that. And I've also always said you can make numbers do what you want to do. And when you've got officers being shot at this rate in one state, I think that's a war on cops. What I didn't tell you was that today in Franklin County, and which is where Columbus is at, we had an officer involved shooting. Last week or the week before, we were a jurisdiction down here in Southwest Ohio was doing a search warrant. They had an officer involved shooting. So, when people say war on cops, it's not just cops getting killed. It's cops being shot at,
and those are the ones you don't hear about nationwide or anything like that.
Right. But we hear about them in our circles, right? So we know it's real. Like when we hear, hey, the SWAT team was doing a search warrant and they had to shoot and kill a guy because he pointed a gun at him, that to us, that goes in that war on cops category. But you may not hear about that in Michigan. You heard about the officer who was killed. And I'm sure in Michigan this week, you've had OISs, and I haven't heard about them down here in Ohio.
Yeah, exactly. And at this conference, one of the topics was, and I didn't even mention it, not if, but when, because it is going to happen in your agency. And they went through, Uvalde, all these places that were small towns, small agencies. And it's not if, but when. And you have to be prepared as an executive, and you have to have your people prepared as well. Like you're talking about the training, all this stuff. So, it's when people say it's not going to happen, that's one of my pet peeves, right? We live in a great community support, great government support, everything. Sometimes people from not around here say, oh, nothing happens there. It's like, no, that's not true. Right. And it's my pet peeve because it happens everywhere. You just never know when it's going to happen.
So many departments are still training for liability and not survival. And
that's a good point.
Yeah. And I think for me, my philosophy at my agency is we're going to get sued. We're going to get sued. Like I get it.
Get in line, right?
Right. Like I have a team of lawyers who I think are some of the best in the state who will defend us and do their job. That's why I pay them, right? That's why they're on a retainer. You get hurt or killed, there's no coming back from that, right? And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The only reason that I exist as a chief of police is to make sure that my men and women go home at the end of their shift every night. That's it. And if I'm not giving them the tools, the resources, the equipment, the training that they need to do that, then in my opinion, I failed. Here's another just quick example. We did ground fighting a couple weeks ago. We do it about 4 times a year as a department. 4 times a year, we're on the mats. Studies have shown, statistics, you can find them, look them up, Google them, send me an email, I'll send it to you. Officers that are trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or hand-to-hand combat, or, pick your art, are less likely to escalate force. And if they use force, it's going to end quicker because they're confident in their skills and their abilities. For a large part of my career, Mike, I'm sure it was the same with you. We go to the mat room maybe once a year, maybe.
Oh, man.
Maybe.
Yeah, not even. And I'll tell you, we're lacking right now. We sent somebody to that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu trainer, whatever it is. I don't know. But we're trying to find a day to get it. So how many hours are you doing? 4 times a year?
So we do 4 4-hour sessions a year.
Nice. That's good.
But I tell you that because after the last training, the instructor, we use Gracie, but the instructor came to me and said, "Hey, would you consider paying a monthly membership to a local Brazilian what's that? 3 times fast.
I screwed it up earlier.
Would you
BJJ, right?
Yeah. Would you spend money every month to pay for a BJJ membership for officers?" And I said, "Well, let's talk through it." So the proposal on the table right now, and I'm waiting on the email back from the gentleman, is I will pay for your monthly membership, but you're going to go twice a week to a 1-hour session. We're going to make sure, obviously, that the curriculum and what he's teaching is in line. But if it all adds up, that is money that is well spent, because I know that the ROI, the return on the investment, is going to pay off tenfold down the road when they have to go hands-on with somebody and somebody pulls away from them. They're not going to freak out. They're not going to go to their taser right away, or heaven forbid their gun. They're going to be confident in their skill set and, take care of business. But we can't worry so much about liability that we forget the fundamentals. And the fundamentals are making sure our people go home.
Yeah, I think that's the major conversation that we've been having lately, and we need to get on the mat. But, we talked to our use of force guy, and it's like, we can't do 1 day of 8 hours. You lose interest after so long. So our plan, obviously, when we get our new station, we've got a mat room coming in, is we're trying to do an hour and a half, 2 hours a month. It's constant training, after your shift. So you're getting over 12, and, that's the plan. But we got to do the practice. So we were already setting up a training day for later this summer to get on the mat and get back to it, because it's been a little bit for us.
Yeah, I just saw Police One released an article yesterday, the day before, I think, that there's a department, I think it's Santa Fe, New Mexico. I think it's the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. You have to look this up. They work 10-hour days, and they allow 2 hours of their 10-hour shift. They basically make you do, I shouldn't say make, that might be a strong word, but you do wellness, you do counseling, you do whatever. But it based on what I recall off the top of my head, every day you work. So you basically work 8, and then 2 hours is spent on some kind of wellness. And I was talking with my assistant chief today, and I'm like, you know what? Let's look at that, because can you imagine if every day I got you for 2 hours every day to do working out, which I let my guys work out every day now for 90 minutes. So
no, I know you have. And so we created a policy for it. We haven't released it yet because we're still trying to figure it out. And like, again, we're building the station. Our workout facility is not on site, so it makes it a little different, but we've got the policy drafted, ready to go as soon as, as soon as we get this building up and running. Yeah.
So I was telling my assistant chief, I'm like, we work 12-hour days now. We give them 90 minutes to work out. That includes showering and everything else. I want to look at this model, and I want to see if there's a way we can make that work. And I don't know if we can or not, but
with manpower wise, because it's tough on a smaller agency.
It is. And I think especially on the 10-hour shifts, you have to have so many people to fill in those gaps. But the point is, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I know that 90 minutes a day working out on duty is a huge win for my people. Mm-hmm. We do every twice a year. We do our mental wellness
health
check. Yeah. I went yesterday. It was my appointment was yesterday.
Did they put you off? Did they put you off work?
That's why we're doing the podcast tonight. But no, my wife and I went yesterday, and we sat down and talked to her for an hour. And
so it's not just officers. It's family, it's spouse as well.
Oh yeah, My
Nice.
daughter,
Okay,
my daughter went. Yeah,
I didn't realize that. I thought it was just for the officers. Wow, that's good.
No, it's the whole kit and caboodle.
That's where we're at next. I talked to another agency who we want to share this one person that's going to come down and do it. So we're close, and I think it's because of the conversations we had last summer about it and how important it is.
By the way, did you see? So we were in a 291,
Mm-hmm.
and I just saw today 294 graduated.
Yeah, Cash ran the Yellow Brick Road with him too. Did you see that?
I saw that, and I saw Bongino was the one that gave the certificates on the stage today.
Yeah, I didn't. I got the link to watch, and I didn't.
Now you were you were at the Ritz.
Yeah, but what about the pilot program, Huntsville, Alabama? You have heard that, right?
Yeah, no, I wrote a long email today to the powers to be.
I've got mine drafted here. I've got to sit down. And...
Yeah, so those of you listening, if you don't know this, there's talk about moving the FBI National Academy to Huntsville, Alabama as part of this move. And anybody who has been to the National Academy knows this is a huge mistake. There is so much tradition at the National Academy, from the Yellow Brick Road to Hogan's Alley to the infamous tree to just the trips to New York and Philadelphia and the networking opportunities and going to DC.
And that's what we talked about. Yes, I ran into one of our classmates was at this conference as well. And, you're bringing international students over to see the strength of America in DC. You're going to New York. No disrespect to Huntsville, Alabama, but if I'm coming from overseas, DC is where it's at, right? You're right around there. There's other people. I talked to a guy that I think he was 287 from West Virginia. He had never been to DC. This was great for him. So it's not just the overseas. People are going to see the history of America,
right?
And taking it out of there, I don't think it's a good mix. And I know it's probably cheaper for them down there, and maybe Doge got in there and cut a few zeros off everything. Who knows? But maybe that's done now too.
Well, time will tell.
Yeah. Well, Scott, why don't you take it away this time, because we talked a lot of use of force stuff, a lot of stuff. Give a tip, and we'll get out of here and come back hopefully next time, maybe with a guest or a new topic.
Well, I think the motto is anytime, anywhere, by anyone, for any reason. And if you go to Caliber Press, you read the Street Survival book, you've been to one of our trainings, one of our Caliber Press classes, you've heard anytime, anywhere, by anyone, for any reason. I always follow that up with this statement, and that is be prepared, not paranoid. I want officers out there. We want to make our officers confident enough that they can do their jobs to the best of their abilities, but we don't want them so paranoid that they fail. So be prepared, not paranoid. And the way we make them prepared, not paranoid, is by providing them training. Good, realistic training, not just checking the box. And I know I sound like a broken record sometimes for those of you that have been listening, but this is continuing to be a problem, and we're not making progress, in my opinion, quickly enough or on a large scale. This is an organizational change that has to occur with how we train law enforcement officers if we're going to continue holding into this standard.
Perfect. You heard it there from the use of force expert. Yeah. And we know.
I've been called
we know he's use of force expert. All right. Well, hey,
Ohio State shirt on.
Yeah, that's not much force there. I think we ran over you, but
here we go.
Hey, appreciate it. We will see you for episode 9 coming up soon. Stay tuned. More to come.
All right. Take care.
Bye.